In this episode, we're going to make governance feel like a practical engine that keeps security running every day, rather than a stack of policies that sit on a shelf. Governance is the way an organization decides what must be done, who is responsible, how work is tracked, and how leadership knows whether the program is healthy. In a payment environment, governance matters because security controls only remain effective when they are maintained consistently, and consistency rarely happens by accident. Beginners sometimes imagine security as a collection of technical settings, but settings drift, people change roles, projects add new systems, and urgency encourages shortcuts. Governance is what turns security into routine behavior by creating repeatable expectations and accountability. When we say so security becomes routine, we mean that secure decisions happen because that is how the organization works, not because a heroic individual remembers to push the right buttons. Good governance reduces surprises because it creates a rhythm of planning, reviewing, measuring, and improving. Over time, that rhythm is what makes a program resilient. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A good starting point is understanding that governance is different from hands-on security work, but it shapes whether hands-on work actually happens. Hands-on work includes configuring systems, managing access, patching vulnerabilities, and monitoring logs. Governance sets the rules and priorities for that work, and it makes sure people have the authority and time to do it. If governance is weak, people may want to do the right thing but be pulled in too many directions, or they may not know what the right thing is. If governance is strong, security tasks are planned, tracked, and supported, so they are less likely to be skipped under pressure. For beginners, it helps to think of governance like traffic rules and road design. Drivers can be skilled, but without clear rules and visible lanes, accidents increase. Governance creates the lanes for security work so the organization can move quickly without crashing into avoidable risk. The goal is to make secure behavior the default path. Ownership is the first practical pillar of governance, because a program with unclear ownership tends to degrade. Someone needs to be responsible for the overall security program. Someone needs to own specific control areas like access management or vulnerability management, and someone needs to own key systems. Ownership does not mean one person does everything. It means responsibilities are assigned and recognized. When ownership is clear, tasks have a home, decisions have accountable parties, and exceptions are visible instead of hidden. Beginners sometimes assume responsibility is obvious, but in real organizations, gaps appear when two teams assume the other team is handling something. Governance reduces those gaps by defining who approves what, who reviews what, and who acts when something is out of compliance. This clarity is what turns security from a vague goal into a set of managed activities. Policies and standards are another pillar, but it is important to understand what makes them useful. A policy states what must be true, such as requiring strong authentication or limiting access to sensitive data. A standard describes how the organization implements that policy in a consistent way, such as defining acceptable encryption approaches, logging expectations, or configuration baselines. The danger is that policies can become generic and disconnected from daily work, which makes them easy to ignore. Good governance keeps policies and standards practical, clear, and tied to actual systems and processes. For beginners, it helps to recognize that policies are not meant to impress auditors. They are meant to guide decisions and prevent repeated arguments about basics. When policies are aligned with reality, they create a shared language for security, so teams can move faster with fewer misunderstandings. This is a key step in making security routine because routine depends on clarity. Risk management is where governance connects security efforts to what matters most, because not all risks are equal. In payment environments, risks that could expose cardholder data or disrupt payment processing are usually high priority. Governance creates a process for identifying risks, evaluating their impact and likelihood, deciding how to treat them, and tracking the results. For beginners, the key point is that risk management is not about predicting the future perfectly. It is about making deliberate decisions rather than reactive ones. If you know which systems are most critical, you can allocate resources appropriately, test more often where it matters, and avoid wasting effort on low-impact tasks. Governance also helps handle exceptions, because sometimes a system cannot meet a standard immediately, and the organization needs a disciplined way to accept temporary risk while planning remediation. Routine security requires this kind of decision-making structure so exceptions do not become permanent loopholes. Training and awareness are also part of governance because security depends on human behavior as much as on technology. People create accounts, approve access requests, deploy changes, respond to alerts, and handle incidents, and their decisions shape the security posture. Governance ensures that people receive the guidance they need and that expectations are consistent across teams. This does not mean endless training sessions. It means ensuring that people who touch sensitive systems understand their responsibilities and the consequences of shortcuts. For beginners, it is helpful to see training as part of system design. If the program expects a support team to verify identity before a password reset, they must know how to do it and why it matters. If developers are expected to follow secure development practices, they must understand what those practices are. When governance supports training, routine security becomes more likely because people are equipped to do the right thing without improvising under pressure. Measurement and metrics are what allow governance to function without relying on assumptions. If leadership cannot see whether patches are timely, whether access reviews happen, or whether monitoring is effective, then the program is running blind. Metrics provide visibility into whether routine activities are happening and whether they are producing desired outcomes. Good metrics are not just vanity numbers. They are indicators tied to risk, such as the percentage of critical systems patched within expected timeframes or the number of high-risk access exceptions still open. For beginners, the lesson is that measurement is not about punishing teams. It is about managing reality. When you measure consistently, you can spot trends, identify bottlenecks, and allocate resources where they are needed. Routine security is easier to sustain when progress is visible and success is defined. Change management is a core governance component because change is where security is most often lost. Governance establishes how changes are requested, reviewed, tested, approved, and deployed, especially for systems that touch sensitive data. It also defines when additional security review is required, such as when a change affects authentication, data flows, or network boundaries. Beginners sometimes think governance slows change, but the opposite can be true when it is done well. Clear change processes reduce chaos, prevent last-minute surprises, and make releases more predictable. Predictability supports security because it reduces the odds that someone will deploy an unreviewed fix in a panic. When change is governed, security becomes routine because secure review is built into the normal flow of work. Incident response governance is another way security becomes routine because it defines what happens when something goes wrong. A program that only discusses incidents after a crisis is already behind. Governance sets expectations for what counts as an incident, who must be notified, how evidence is preserved, and how decisions are made under pressure. It also ensures that incident response is practiced and improved over time, rather than being improvised. For beginners, the key point is that incident response is not just a technical activity, it is an organizational capability. If teams do not know who has authority to isolate systems or disable accounts, response becomes slow and confused. Routine security includes routine readiness, where roles and actions are known before the emergency arrives. That readiness reduces damage and speeds recovery, which is exactly what governance is meant to support. Third-party management belongs in governance because many payment environments rely on vendors, service providers, and hosted systems. Governance sets requirements for how third parties are selected, what security expectations they must meet, and how ongoing oversight is performed. Beginners sometimes assume vendors automatically handle security well, but vendor security varies widely, and the business remains responsible for managing the risk. Governance creates a framework for evaluating third parties and for ensuring that vendor relationships do not introduce uncontrolled access or data exposure. This includes managing contracts, access pathways, and responsibilities during incidents. When third-party oversight is routine, vendor-related surprises become less common. Routine security depends on making external relationships part of the program, not a separate world that escapes scrutiny. As you bring all these pieces together, governing the program so security becomes routine is about building a system of accountability, clarity, and continuous management. You assign ownership so responsibilities are not vague, and you create policies and standards that guide real decisions rather than decorate binders. You manage risk deliberately so effort is focused where impact is highest, and you support people with training so secure behavior is practical and consistent. You measure what matters so leadership can see whether the program is healthy, and you govern change so security is not lost in daily updates. You build incident readiness as a normal capability, and you include third parties in your expectations and oversight. When governance works, security is not a seasonal scramble. It is a steady routine that survives growth, turnover, and changing threats. That routine is what keeps payment environments resilient over time.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.